Welcome to the 20th and final episode of Season 1 of Full Throttle, the Presidio Group's automotive industry podcast. I'm your host, Jason Stein, Presidio's managing director. On a regular basis, Full Throttle serves as the industry's meeting point for great conversations with leaders across the automotive world.
You had websites, and dealers had websites, and they were just so wowed by this thing that was people were going to shop online, and so you had this whole proliferation of website companies. And then all of a sudden you had leads from these websites, and you had to find a way to manage the leads. And dealers weren't good at that. And in a lot of cases, they're still not good. So you had leads management systems that were created, right? And I'm maybe this is controversial. I actually think there's a bit of a renaissance going on right now with DMS.
The world of venture capital is a fascinating place, especially at this time in the industry. Technology is moving into auto retail at a blinding pace. Dealer valuations are changing quickly. The market is changing at an even quicker clip. So how does someone who is around deals all the time evaluate deals? How do you evaluate it when your inbox is jammed daily with prospects for the next big thing? And there are 1,000 next big things every year. Today, we hear from someone who has become a surgeon when it comes to analyzing deals and looking at technology and picking winners and losers, even if sometimes he doesn't bat 1,000. Chase Fraser's history is as interesting as his present day. Born an entrepreneur and raised at the right hand of Red McCombs, Chase has seen more than his share of twists and turns and ups and downs. He got into venture capital when few, if any, were considering it in automotive. What he has seen since in just the last 15 years has been dizzying, to say the least. With a lot of talk focused around startups and VC money and opportunity, who better than to talk about the space than Chase? He's the insider's insider. Today, we get a glimpse. So what has he learned from the thousands of deals that he said no to? What about the ones where he said yes? And where is Chase placing his bets with dealers in the future? Today, we talk pattern recognition, getting married, and a fourth fundraise, all in one jam-packed episode of Full Throttle.
Hello, I'm Chase Fraser, and this is Presidio's Full Throttle podcast.
What a pleasure to have Chase Fraser on the program. We've been in similar rooms together. I know that he has been an enormous supporter of everything that has gone on within the Presidio Group. And it's just great to see you again. It's great to have you on. Welcome in.
Great to be here. This is going to be fun. Thanks for having me.
It will be fun because of your history and where you are today. So let's start with the history, because some may not know your rich history with a fellow named Red McCombs. Tell me a little bit about that. And everybody listening, of course, knows who Red is, but share.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back in time a little bit, right before I met Red, because it makes sense to this story. So I was an entrepreneur in the automotive space, and I call myself a quiet company in the sense that we didn't have the big booth at NADA, and the way we sold was through resellers, and so ended up having a good business. We had an exit, but in that process, I met Red. And Red at that point was probably in his late 80s, and he loved technology. And so I have this meeting with him, and he says, "Hey, I really like your business. I'd like to buy your business." And I'm kind of thinking, "Whoa, okay, no, but I want to get to know you."
Right.
And so through these conversations, I'd meet with Red, and I didn't know if it was going to be literally 3 minutes or 3 hours. Because when you sit down with Red, it was kind of like sitting down with the king in his kingdom, right? Like he was the guy. I mean, at one point, Red had 76 stores. Like he was a big dealer. People forget
big dealer,
how big he was at one point. And so this relationship with Red blossomed. And I get this idea after I sell my company. I get this idea to get into venture capital, because there weren't a lot of people doing venture in automotive. In fact, there was nobody doing it.
This is around what time frame?
So I sold my company in 98. And so this would have been, I sold my company in 08, 09. And so this would have been right after that.
Okay.
And so I go have this meeting with Red and I say, hey, he was my first call on the fund. So I'm like, Red's going to love this. He's going to invest in the fund. And I have this meeting. He's like, yeah, this is a good idea. I leave. And one of his people, he's got, he had lots of people. It was Tony Remus. Guys on this phone know who Tony Remus is. Great friend. And
yep.
one of my favorite folks in the industry. Tony called me and he goes, hey, Red wants to invest, but he wants to be your 50-50 partner. And that was, in my brain just, I was like, what? And I hung up the phone and I said, you know what? I'm crazy not to have Red as my 50-50 partner. So I gave Red half of what I was building, just kind of there on the spot. And kind of the rest was history. And so when you look at the name, we're FM Capital, it's Fraser McCombs Capital is what it was originally. And we just changed the name in the last 3 years to FM Capital.
Yeah. What'd you learn from him?
Yeah, I'd sit down and have these meetings, and he was so optimistic, like all the time. And even when he would have failures, he was just still incredibly optimistic. He always believed, he talked about winning, right? And he always believed he was going to win. He told me once that he was involved in 400 different businesses. And I'm not talking about rooftops counting into that number, 400 businesses.
Wow.
So he was very much a deal junkie, but he loved the process and he loved people. And that was the other thing. You'd sit down with him and everyone was important to Red. Like he had your, I mean, I was a nobody and I'm still a nobody. And I'd sit down with Red and he'd focus on you and he'd just give you complete and total attention. And it was phenomenal.
Yeah. You have taken what is now FMC into a whole new level, and we'll get into the fourth fund here, but let's talk about the previous three. How much capital have you raised to date?
Yeah. So on those three funds, 300 million.
Yeah. Amazing. And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And what's interesting to a lot of the people listening is most of that money has come from the industry. In fact, a vast majority. We've got dozens of dealers, big dealer groups, OEMs, tier one suppliers, tech suppliers, vehicle distributors, kind of that ecosystem. And we were really specific. We wanted people in that room that could help us make better decisions. And there's been so many times where I've been in love with a deal, I've taken it to that group, and they've been like, that's not going to work for these reasons, because they know something that I just don't know. And so the group has been really, really important to what I see as our success.
What have you learned from the entrepreneurs that you've been surrounded by?
I love tenacity. It's part of the reason I do this. It's two things. My favorite thing about the entrepreneur is just seeing their dream. You talk to them and you feel that energy and you fall in love with them in some ways. And bluntly, that was my problem in the beginning. I would fall in love with the idea in the entrepreneur, and I've had to become a little hardened actually over a 12-year period.
Well, and you must look at so many deals too, right? I mean,
771 deals
last year. And you pick how many?
I will do 4-5 deals a year.
So how do you not fall in love with the 768 others?
It's really hard. Well, and it's FOMO, this whole fear of missing out. Just that's where, as a VC, we're going to miss a couple of deals, right? And that's very hard. It's just the nature of my industry. But I still fall in love with these guys, because it's the creation. It's beautiful to see it. In my mind, it's kind of the bedrock of what America is. All these big tech companies that are owning the S&P right now, they were all little tiny companies at some point. Some guy or gal with a dream. Man, is that cool? I mean, I literally think, what else would I be doing in my career right now? I don't know what it would be. I mean, it's just too fun. It's too fun being around entrepreneurs.
How many companies have you funded?
Oh, in total, 60 plus.
Okay. And out of, I mean, thousands,
Thousands, literally.
thousands,
Our
Chase.
CRM is just filled with companies.
And have you honed the skill of narrowing the funnel? Describe to me the funnel process.
Yeah, so we've got a team of three that take the first look. So this is just general, kind of a general numbers. About a third of that 770 are just deals that aren't going to even make it to the second cut. It just, you can just tell from looking at them, they're not going to get there. The other two thirds, the team digs in and they have the call. They may go look in a data room and spend some time trying to understand what's going on with the company. And then the way our process works is we have a weekly call where those three people present to us about 5 companies a week, 5, 4 to 7, call it. And they create it's just one PowerPoint slide with a lot of information on it. And they essentially pitch us, which is pretty powerful because we can teach our folks to pitch us. It means they understand the business pretty thoroughly, right?
Right.
And so we always, though, in that meeting go, okay, got it, interesting. Go back and find out a little bit more about this one thing, this other thing, this thing. So they've always got homework. And then after the homework, they come back and we turn it over to a partner. So that's a lot of details for you, but that's how our process works internally. And then the partner runs with the deal to the place where we decide whether we're going to invest or not.
Tell me that moment, Chase, when you're listening to one of the thousands and your team has boiled it down and they're doing the PowerPoint and you go, whoa, we got it.
Yeah, one of the things that's happened that I didn't know was going to happen is just, and I guess it's obviously the way the human brain works, is pattern recognition. I see so many deals that quick. It 10 minutes into it is just icing on the cake. I kind of know in 30 seconds. Generally, I generally know what I got in 30 seconds.
Mm.
Because of seeing a lot of deals. And it's a challenge when we hire new people because we've got to teach them pattern recognition. And you can't teach it. You can only learn it through the school of hard knocks. You got to do it. And so every time we bring somebody else new in, we've got an employee right now that's been here for a year plus. She's great and she's still learning pattern recognition.
Wow. Pattern recognition over time and all the failures, right? I mean, the mistakes make you where you are right now. It's the shots you miss.
Yeah, we've got, this is a little biblical and kind of funny, but the 10 commandments, we've now got our 14 commandments. So every time we make what we consider to be a big mistake, we add it to our list. And in the early days, it was less than 10, and now we've exceeded the commandments. But it's important for us to know, hey, don't do this again. We got to learn.
Like what?
Yeah, this is a very random one. We don't do well when there's spouses working in the same business.
No.
Where you've got the guy's the CEO and his wife is something. There ends up being this really interesting, and it's never worked, honestly, relationship where I think they don't ever get a break. I think they go home and they talk about it, and it's 24/7, and it becomes overwhelming, and it just doesn't work. So we don't tell our entrepreneurs up front that, okay, your husband wife team, no.
Word to the wise: if you've got a great idea, don't get married,
or don't tell me.
Or don't tell you, right? She's involved, but you'll never know. Or he's involved. Well, that's fascinating. That's a mix of just human behavior in the confluence of great ideas, then, isn't it?
It is. And because this is their baby, going back to the creative process, they take it so serious. This isn't like they just love this thing and it becomes a part of them. They psychologically tie themselves to this startup success or failure. It's great.
Wow. Dealer technology.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, you've been doing this, you've been walking around the NADA floor as long as I have, and you've seen the cycles. This is an exciting time. I mean, I really feel like we're at kind of the next renaissance of new tech. So like help me think through this because you've been there with me. You had the websites, and dealers had websites, and they were just so wowed by this thing that was people were going to shop online, and so you had this whole proliferation of website companies. And then all of a sudden you had leads from these websites, and you had to find a way to manage the leads. And dealers weren't good at that. And in a lot of cases, they're still not good. So you had leads management systems that were created, right? And then all of a sudden, Salesforce and Siebel create CRMs outside of the industry. And the really good entrepreneurs in our space, which they're phenomenal, great sales guys in our space, right? They're like, whoa, 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 we need to do that, but we need to build something that's purpose built for automotive. So there were 10, 15 of those guys that just sprouted up over a 3-year period for CRM. Think about what DealerTrack did, what Mark O'Neill did with finance and the ability to kind of lending tree finance. So I think that was a big deal in our space. And Mark O'Neill's phenomenal. And I'm maybe this is controversial. I actually think there's a bit of a renaissance going on right now with DMS. We're an investor in Techion, so I'm biased, but I'm super close with Cox and Reynolds and CDK. All those guys are great buddies. All ships rise. I think everybody's a little better. And it's because I think Techion raised the bar a
it's
little
the competition,
bit.
isn't it?
Yeah, and it's healthy.
Yeah.
And maybe your dealers are listening right now going, oh, no, there's no renaissance. It's going to get better. I really believe over the next 5 years, you're just going to see better products out of all of them.
What do you think about when you consider investing in dealer technology? What are you looking for?
We like traction. So we'd like for a guy to have 100+ stores. So that guy or gal, right? So that's important because it's one, to have an idea. It's two, for dealers to be using it. We really like, I told you we have dozens of dealers that are investors. We really like for our dealers to be using it, our investors. And so we're looking at a deal right now, just to get into the weeds, called Evenflow. And Evenflow is a way to do dynamic pricing in fixed ops. So they've been doing dynamic pricing in the airline industry for decades. Prices change. You think about a service department, it ebbs and flows. Super busy from 7:30 to 10:30, super busy at lunch, super busy at the end of the day. But you have these lull periods. So what if you could overlay pricing that said, hey, it's going to be more expensive at the busy times. It's going to be less expensive in the less busy times, to try to even that out a little bit. We have not invested, but I'm giving you that as an example. Is I'm testing that at a few stores, or I'm introducing that to some of my LPs, because I want them to give me really, really good feedback. And they'll come back to us and say, hey, this works or it doesn't work.
And that's an important point. Some of your LPs you mentioned, there's a strategy for investing for dealers that it's not just strategically investing, but it's commercially investing, and it's being vested, if you will, in the product. That's critical, isn't it, Chase?
Yeah, dealers are such good entrepreneurs that I don't know that they would say this. I'll say it because I know they think it. It makes them a little crazy that they've spent so much money with all these vendors who went off and had exits. And they look at it and go, okay, I was writing that guy a $500,000 check a year across all my stores. And he just went and sold the CDK for $75 million. So they look at me and they go, I want to be part of that. And I want to have ownership in that company that just sold to CDK. And so it's this really nice marriage. They get to be part of it, and they get to help me make better decisions.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, and there's so much skin in it from both sides, but there's also practical daily usage, and that leads to just better iterations of the products, doesn't it?
For sure.
Yeah.
And my LPs are hard on these companies, which is good. We want that because we know it's going to be battle tested.
You've been involved with the company that the Presidio Group knows well, Orbi. Can you talk about that investment? Why Orbi?
Yeah, and I'm glad to be working on that with you guys, obviously, and just a plug for Brody. Brody started Presidio, as you obviously know, and the industry knows. People on this podcast knows Brody's phenomenal. He's a good friend, but he's also just a really, really good human being, and he's a good business guy. So just side note on you guys, I'm proud and happy to be part of what you guys do. Yeah, when I think about Orbi, we have a category where we call it borrowing from the outside. And what's happened in the industry is I watch what people do outside of the industry. And I'm like, at some point, we're going to do that in the industry, much like my example of CRM. Siebel and Salesforce started the game. We didn't start that. But really good entrepreneurs said, hey, I want to do what those guys are doing, but I want to do it very purpose-built for us. That's what Orbi is. HubSpot has been around for a decade plus, probably more than a decade. So this whole idea of marketing automation software, I was just waiting for somebody to show up in the industry who had a HubSpot-like product. And Orbi was the first to do it. It's an interesting story in that we talked to Orbi for 2.5 years before we actually did the deal. It was a process of going back to two things. Proof point. He was figuring out his model, but more especially, you can't talk about HubSpot and marketing software automation in the same way you do outside of the industry. You have to use dealer speak. And so Atul is the CEO at that company. It took Atul a couple of years to really learn dealer speak. And so we'd have conversations. I'm like, I wouldn't position it that way. And I would really talk about this. And now he's got his pitch dialed. Dealers really understand what he's doing, and the business has gone crazy. So going back to pattern recognition, we waited until those things were aligned. And then we're like, okay, we're in. And we're in that with the Holman family. They're an LP in our fund and really, really close to those folks. So and there's a lot of dealers actually in Orbi, as you know, who are direct investors, big dealers.
That's right.
So I got a lot of belief that Orbi is going to end up being a really nice exit for us.
Let's talk about your fourth fund for a minute. Give me some highlights. Where are you right now? What are you looking for?
Yeah, we're trying to raise 200 million. So we're 100 million into that 200. We'll raise this fund for the remainder of this year. So we'll close it in Q4. And what that means to those on the listening, when we close a fund, I can't raise money for another couple of 2-3 years. So it's closed means like, that's it. You know, that is the fund size. It's going really well. It's, as I said earlier, it's a lot of strategics. It's a lot of people that really, really know the space. If there are those that are listening that want to know more, hit our website, go to contact us, find me on LinkedIn. I bet I know a lot of the people that are listening to this. Call me. would love to have you involved.
We'll flash the number up on the screen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Just a final thing here, Chase. When you think about what's going to move the needle on dealer tech, what really gets you excited right now?
It's so overused because we just have worn AI out, and so we're all tired of talking about it. It is one, AI is going to change the world. We got so excited about EV and autonomy, and I mean, they're all great, but those are like incremental movements in just what goes on in just the general world scope. AI is just, it's incredible what's going to happen to all of us. And so, I mean, there's a couple of AI, and there's more than a couple. There's probably 5 or 6 companies right now that are doing AI-like things in the space, and there's some good ones out there, but they're just dipping their toe in the water, right? There's going to be gigantic movement in AI. And I was actually thinking this morning before we got on this call, I thought, is there going to be a period where AI sells a vehicle better than a human? I think the answer is yes. Because if I could psychologically profile you while you're talking and understand why you buy, and it really be a lot of science behind it on what you're saying to me and what that actually means and how I change the way I sell to you, I think that they may be better salespeople ultimately. And what does that do to our industry? And I'm talking such future here, right? But we shouldn't underestimate the power of what's coming with AI. It's incredible.
Is there a day that it's going to take your pattern iteration 30-second and knock it down to about 2 seconds to be able to figure it out?
You know, I've thought about, am I going to be a dinosaur at some point? And I can't believe I'm saying this on a podcast. Maybe not in my lifetime, but I think venture ultimately is run by AI. Because I think that pattern recognition it took me years to learn it. It would take AI 5 seconds because it would just be part of the program, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point, AI will see something that I don't see. So the answer is, I turned 52 yesterday. So I don't think it happens while I'm doing this, but it's going to happen. And it's going to happen all over finance. This whole robo investor idea, there's just no reason to go call your Edward D. Jones broker in the future because AI is going to be so much better.
When AI will ask the question in the room, are you married and is your spouse involved?
That's true. I mean, it's right. It's just going to know so much more about us. And the other thing, it doesn't even have to ask the question. It goes and profiles us on the way we shop, on your income levels, on the neighborhood you live in. I mean, just think about the data that's going to aggregate to completely and totally meet your needs.
What would Red say about what you've done?
He'd be excited. He every time I'd meet with him, he'd literally pat me on the leg like I was 12 years old and say, "I'm proud of you." And in those instances, I was 12 years old, right? Because I liked hearing that from Red McCombs. So the answer is, I think he'd be proud. And the family is still, his daughter is still running the stores, and she's phenomenal. Great. They're still, he passed away, obviously. But yeah, he loved this. And even at 95, he would have still been in this and excited about it. He'd have been all over AI, I promise you.
Oh, yeah. Well, happy belated birthday. He would have patted your leg, not like you were 12, but you were 52. And thank you for sharing your story on a fascinating journey here through the world of everything that you know. Really appreciate it, Chase. And thanks for being part of the program. Thanks for making
Of course, this was fun.
Yes, thank you. Thanks again to my guest, Chase Fraser, managing partner at Fraser McCombs Capital. And thanks for listening to Full Throttle. Come back to us later in the month for our next interview on this platform. Email me with suggestions, jstein@thepresidiogroup.com, or go to the website, thepresidiogroup.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn, and thanks for listening to the program. We'll see you next time.